So, welcome to another episode of Project Peak Performance. Today, we speak to remarkable individuals, and we have an amazing one today. I'm hosting it with Dave Gibbons, and today our guest embodies resilience, leadership, and spirit of adventure, Mike Bates. Mike Bates is a former counter-terrorism covert operations leader and human intelligence specialist who served 20 years in the Royal Marines and Ministry of Defence. After his distinguished military career, Mike turned to focusing on charity work and became the fastest solo British person to complete the world's toughest row across the Atlantic. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and runs his own academy, inspiring others to achieve greatness. In addition, Mike co-founded Next 45, an initiative helping men live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives by providing the tools and insights needed to navigate midlife and beyond. Join us as we explore Mike's incredible journey from the front lines of counter-terrorism to conquering the Atlantic and learning the powerful lessons he shares on resilience, leadership, and overcoming adversity. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Rob. Not a bad intro, is it? Not bad for 43 years. We're only halfway there.
It's like a mic drop moment, that, isn't it? I'm thinking, how long is this intro going to go on?
Well, I was just trying to work out from a podcast perspective, like how do I cram all of what you've done, Mike, in at least a minute? Because it seems like loads. So welcome to the show, Mike. I really, really appreciate you joining us today. So where do we start? So I've given you obviously a bit of background on who Mike is. So Mike, over to you. I would say, who is Mike now in this current day? How do you identify yourself as Mike today?
Well, that's a big question to start with, mate. Identity, right? I think it's a really interesting word, isn't it? Because for half of my entire life, at the age of 40, I'd served our country. That was my identity. And I think we founded Next 45 because we knew that men struggle to find their identity in the second half of life because things change, right? So I think for me, my life's purpose and mission has been helping other people. It's why I saved our country. It's why I started businesses in lockdown to create communities. It's why I speak on stage around Europe. It's why I do stuff like this. And I think as I've moved into the second half of my life, or the next 45 years, if you want to say that, I've certainly tried to focus more on others than myself. I think, I read a great book called The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which I encourage everyone to read. And he speaks of life as being two mountains. The first one, of course, is the one that we all climb, particularly men. And it's all about success and status and power and all the games that the mating game, the corporate game. And rightly so, right? We're ambitious, building testosterone, let's go, conquer the world.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, once we hit midlife, we kind of slide off that first mountain into the valley between the two. And that's the archetypal midlife crisis, right? You're lost in the jungle at the bottom. And I suppose where I am right now is on that second climb, heading towards an even more fulfilling summit, hopefully, which will be a life's work which I can reflect back on when I take my last breath and be super proud about me.
Nice. What is the summit? If you could articulate it, what does that summit look like for you?
Well, I think it's the end of life. I don't want to start being talking morbid about it, but we're all going to run out of time at some point. Yeah. And I think there can be nothing more sad and regretful than to have regrets at that point. There's many regrets, isn't there? The book 5 Regrets of Dying by Bronnie Ware talks about it. Wish I'd worked less. Wish I'd spent more time with the people I cared about. Wish I'd cared less about what other people thought about me. Yeah. So the whole idea for me is, when I speak on stage and when we do talk about Next 45, is trying to get people to right now look ahead and plan their next 45. Because you can write the narrative of your own life. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Yeah. People think, no, I'm trapped. You're not. You can just change anytime you want. But most people just drift through life and they don't think ahead. They blink, they've retired 60, and they're like, God, this isn't the view I wanted to see. Yeah, so it's just about looking ahead, mate. Future authoring.
Yeah. No, I love that. Sorry, Rob.
I want to just pull that back though. Dave, you asked about what your next summit is. Like you talk about a tale of two lives. So what was the peak moment in the previous, Mike? Like what was that poignant moment? And we ask a lot of questions of peak performance. A lot of like athletes, and we always say to them like, what did you feel when you're you know, like that hungry drive upwards, what did you feel was going to be your peak moment in your life? And was it actually, what was the outcome? Did it actually come true? And was the feeling what you thought might be the feeling actually came? Did it match what your expectations were?
Yeah, I think it was probably more a plateau than a summit. And I think it was my career in the intelligence world.
Yeah.
You know, it's the dream job, right? It's the, you know, you're the real life James Bond. You're running agents, you're running surveillance teams, you're working undercover. You know, it's pretty cool stuff. And listen, I'm nothing special. I'm a kid from Doncaster with a handful of GCSEs, no A levels, no degree. And I suppose landing that job as I did when I was 25, having been to Afghanistan, Iraq, Northern Ireland, and stuff with the Marines, was like really, really huge. And to become the first officer in the history of the MOD to have passed the surveillance course, the advanced agent handling course, the advanced modern day undercover course, I think that's probably the pinnacle. But maybe it's a false summit. Maybe the actual pinnacle is the ocean row. I don't know. It's hard to compare the two, but I think when I reflect back on the first half of my life, I'm really proud of that 20-year career.
Mm.
That's brilliant. The reason I was asking with regards to the secondary summit is, you know, we're about the same age, Mike. We've taken different paths, but we've both had this drive to be honest with you saying it, I think the same character. My hero was James Bond, and I didn't realize that until about 2 years ago. And I look back at everything I've done, I go, holy shit, I've modeled my whole life on James Bond and everything that was to do with it. So I took a route down. I wanted to be the international businessman of mystery. I wanted to travel the world doing business, this, that, and the other, and did really well in what I wanted to do. I had some milestones I wanted to achieve. I got there. And when I did, it was the most disappointing place I'd ever found myself, because I really, truly believed that once I hit that, let's call it £1 million, once I got that house, once I got that business, then all of my dreams would be answered. And I was shocked to find out that when I got there was no band playing, there was no one clapping hands, no one give a shit about what I'd done. And it was really disappointing. And then I found myself, and still to this day, it creeps in, to be honest. It's one thing I'm working on is trying to find that next summit. So I was really intrigued when you said, we found ourselves, I know exactly where we're at, I know where we're going, I know what it is. And how does that look? And to be fair, what you've said is very similar to me. I've gone completely away from the material side of things now. I believe we're running two worlds. There's a material one you got to win in, which includes all that shiny shit. But when you're winning that one, you realize actually it's a bit of a false game. There's another one hiding behind it, which nobody looks at. And it's all to do with what's going on inside, actually, more than anything else. So my goals now, what is it that I'm looking towards? And the reason I wanted to try and figure out if it was very similar to mine was, now it's all about me as a person. What do I want? If I died tomorrow, what would I want my obituary to say? And millionaire doesn't come into it. Having a nice house doesn't. In fact, none of that comes into it. It's all about how I treat the people that I'm with, what they think about me and feel about me. And ultimately what I'm trying to do myself currently, it's all about me. You know, I've turned from being the people pleaser into probably more on the line of selfish nowadays, because I believe in, if the king and queen don't eat first, the kingdom will fail. So a whole load of words that are going around in and around what I was getting at. But that's why I was asking with regards to that, because just like you with the the NXT program that you've got going on, there's a lot of people in this position, and it's not necessarily the people that you would think it is. I tend to see it's the people that I see in this position are the ones who I think have already won in life, and it's a whole game changer when you start to see behind the scenes and the cracks.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. A couple of things there that really stand out to me. The difference between a resume virtue and a eulogy virtue, right? Like I talk a lot about that. So the virtues, the behaviors that we want to be known for, right? Like when we look at ourselves on that first mountain or at work, there are resume virtues. He made a load of money. He ran a great business, whatever, he could close great deals. You don't want anyone to say that in the church.
Yeah.
What you want is them to talk about eulogy virtues. He helped others. He said what he, did what he said he was going to do. He was a good person. He was kind, or whatever you wanted to say. So I think absolutely there's two different things there. And I think the challenge with people who are quote unquote successful, no matter what you class as success, but usually it's material worth. people trade the thing they're looking for, which is happiness, for that success.
Yeah.
Because they think when they get there, they'll be happy, but they're not. They've traded it in. And so I think the second half of life for me, with the wisdom that we collect over that first climb, is really about redefining success. And success to me is fulfillment. It's joy. It's it's that moment you walk through the front door, there's a beautiful light coming in the kitchen and you see your wife. And you can't really describe it. It's like magic, or it's bumping into 100 dolphins in the middle of the Atlantic. It's an almost out of worldly experience that you can't really put your finger on, and no money can buy.
Yeah,
that's what I'm searching for.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about it. Like no one has on their gravestone had a 43.2% conversion rate on sales. Like it means nothing. No, I like that. So going from, you left the MOD in 2020, yeah?
Yes.
So like from that transition, like you said, you had those moments where you felt like this was like, mid-20s, achieving what you've achieved, and then you're 15, 20 years obviously in that career afterwards. What made you leave the military at that point? And also how did it feel like on the day after actually you finally hanging up your hat and saying, right, what was that next day like for you?
That's a really good question. In fact, I was asked something very similar on a military leadership webinar I was on recently. So someone asked me, what was the one thing from your time in the military or the intelligence world that you didn't expect to find out, but you find out? And it's controversial. And I don't say it in a negative way, but the thing I learned on the next day is that no one cares. And it's a big lesson. 20 years, that it was my identity. You walk out the gate, you hand in your pass, you can't get back in. You're out the gang. And the world carries on that path that you were on. And you've taken a sidestep and you're off in a different direction. And I think people struggle with that. I actually was really proud of the decision I made, because it would have been the easy option to do another 20 years and get a pension and start playing golf or whatever people do. But I'd admired people like yourselves who'd created something from nothing. And I wanted to create a business, not for me, but for the community. And the reason I left the MOD, to answer that specifically, is because they wouldn't support the Atlantic Road that I wanted to do to raise money for the hospital that saved my youngest son's life. I worked undercover, as I said, worked as an agent handler, and that meant that I couldn't have a social media presence. If you're going to try and raise over 100 grand in lockdown when no one's got any money, you need a social media presence.
Yeah.
And I think there was a way to do it. People in special forces have done it, where they can go and do a campaign like that and remain covert, but my employer wouldn't entertain the idea. And so they gave me an ultimatum: forget the row, crack on with your career, there's a great job here, you're good at it, or the alternative was resignation. And they didn't expect me to write that letter, let me tell you. It felt good when I did.
What was the feeling good about it? When you said it felt good, was that to go towards helping the charity, or what was that felt good?
That was just being authentic. Like authenticity for me is the alignment of three things. It's what we think, it's what we say, and it's what we do. And I'm thinking about the next 45. I'm thinking about living this full life of fulfillment and helping others in a different way, and taking a few risks and living a life without limits, which is my kind of tagline, right? Like if I'd have stayed in that job like 99% of people do for another 20 years to get a nice pension, super easy, that's not me being authentic. And every night, the problem with not being authentic in our lives is that every night you have to close your eyes and put your head on the pillow, and to your point about self, if you are pulling the wool over people's eyes, if you're not living a true life. And for me, I think that is, it's one of the worst feelings ever. So I was really proud of it, mate, and I hadn't looked back.
In my late 20s, Mike, I actually went through something similar at very early stages on, and that I did a TEDx beginning of the year talking about authenticity towards your own mental health, around men's mental health, and I remember trying to put your head down on the pillow, and mine was intoxicating myself with alcohol or drugs and sleeping 2-3 hours a night, because the inner chat inside of like, this is not the life you're supposed to have, when you're going to step over that line, and that was like 2016. And I don't know, the next step when I decided to be authentic and aligned with it, it wasn't an easy step, but it was, by God, it was the most refreshing step you're going to do. It felt like, you know, you open up on a cold day and you get hit by that wind, and it's like, oh, this is me breathing now for once. So I like that. And also, obviously, you did it on behalf, you did the charity work on behalf of your son who's saved, you were saved by the hospital. And I think you, what's the number now that you've raised? It was like over 100 odd plus.
Yeah, I think total I raised 175,000, but 137 we gifted to Leeds Hospital's charity. We were able to buy 6 neonatal monitoring machines for the unit that like saved my son. So right now, as we're talking, there's 6 babies 4 miles up the road at the Leeds General Infirmary having the best care, you know, ever. Okay. We gave 50 grand to Rob Burrows' M&D appeal. I'm good friends with Kevin Sinfield, and he's done an amazing job there. And then we gave another 22 grand to a general fund. And I swore, because we'll talk about the road in a minute, I'm sure, but I swore I'd never row another ocean. Yeah. I've just committed to rowing the North Atlantic in 2026. So it's exclusive for you guys. It's happening again, but more difficult, more dangerous.
It goes to show the type of people. How many? We've got like elite runners within the, you know, there's only 5 of us. 2 of them are elite runners, and it's, I'm not doing another one. As soon as they've done the race.
Literally, I did a 100-kilometer ultra 2 weekends ago with one of the other guys, and I was like, well, I'm going to take a break for a bit. And by Tuesday, the missus was sat next to me going, do you know what? It's nice for you to have a little bit of a break away from all that run you've been doing, whilst I've been looking at, oh, can I do this Equinox one in September? And can I do 100 miles in this one? Because I reckon I could do the 24-hour race under 100 miles. So, like, you never.
Why not? Like that, you know, why not? I mean, you should be constantly, in my mind, you should be constantly setting goals that slightly extend your grasp, right? Like that is living. Victor Frankl spoke about it in Man's Search for Meaning, another great book. You should constantly have a goal that you're working towards. Without that, you have nothing. You are stagnant, and you have what Frankl spoke about as being an existential vacuum. And that existential vacuum is where mental ill health lives, it's where anxiety lives, it's where suicide lives, where you feel like there's nothing to live for. So mate, I'm all for just cracking on and doing whatever you want to do. Get it done.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I love the fact of like the neonatal ward. Like I've got twins, and I run a twin community out there. We've got the #1 twin podcast in the UK. So we deal with a lot of soon to be, current, and twin parents. And obviously that's tends to be more complicated in those procedures. So to see the receiving ends of those people, like a phenomenal achievement for you doing the rowing as well, and obviously doing the hard effort for that. So I could applaud you on that one. So what's the difference between the last one and the one you've got planned?
I wouldn't do another one solo. I mean, I did it on my own. More people climb Everest every year than have ever rowed an ocean solo. It's not easy. Did it mega fast because I was just so crippled by the loneliness, if I'm being honest. It was just brutal and debilitating and actually inhumane. We're not designed to be on our own. And we tell ourselves, I can do anything. You can't do anything on your own. The good stuff happens with others. And I found myself just desperately longing for human connection. So I'd speak to a bird that flew past, and I'd have a full-blown conversation. Hi, Emma, what's your name? You're fishing. The moon, the stars, the fish. Just trying to reconnect. So I wouldn't do another solo row because it just blew my mind. Made me pretty battered. But so we're going to do it as a team. We're going to do it as a team of 4. It is a pretty high-profile team, so I can't disclose the names of the individuals on the boat yet, but we're going to announce it in January 2025. It will be all over the BBC, so you will hear a lot about it.
I was literally about to say,
definitely not going to ask that question now then, Rob.
No. I said I was going to say, like, did you have your Wilson moment? And literally, did you have your own Wilson, like, off was it Castaway with Tom Hanks? Like, what were you talking to? That was going to be my next question. So you did answer that quite rightly. So that's a good one. So the Atlantic row happened. You had obviously your profile. So what was like? What would you say would be some of the moments you had on that row that were what would you say your highest and your lowest?
Yeah. So the highest was finishing it. Like, let's get that one out. The highest was rowing into English Harbour and seeing my family again, right? Like that, you can't beat that feeling. Because that's all I thought about 24 hours a day for 46 days and nights. Like that's literally all I thought about. There was 3 really dark days, day 6, day 17, day 38, where I was just broken and beaten up. I mean, I was rowing anywhere between 14 and 17 hours a day. I was doing it in one big block during daylight hours predominantly because I could see the waves and interact with them better on the oars. And I was trying to get about 4 hours, 4.5 hours sleep at night, 3 90-minute sleep blocks back to back. But I mean, it was just broken light sleep. There was no restorative sleep. So I just was getting ground down and beaten up. But what was interesting, and I'm not a religious man at all, right? In fact, I'm a skeptic at heart. But on 2 of those 3 days, when I had my lowest, darkest moments, dolphins turned up. And like, not like a couple like you'd see in the Sea Life Centre, like hundreds of dolphins, man. And anyone who's seen them in their natural environment, it is just the most magical thing. And they were interacting with the boat, and it was almost like, you know, someone had sent them to try and uplift me. In fact, the first time they arrived, day 6, I was having to dive under the boat to clean the bottom because you had to do that every 5 days to keep it nice and fast. It's 4 miles deep, the ocean, right? I'm on my own, connected just with a piece of line. And I was really nervous. That was probably the thing I was nervous most about, was getting into that deep water. You know, there's marlin, there's sharks, there's whales, all sorts. And I was talking myself through it. Oh, you can do it. God, you can do it, mate. You need to do it now. Got everything set up, stripped off naked, turned around, dolphins were there. I was like, whoa. Started filming them. They then disappeared. And I thought, right, I'm going to give it like 10, 15 minutes, then I'll get in. Give it 15 minutes. Got in, cleaned the bottom of the boat. Took me 45 minutes. Didn't see a thing underwater. Came back up on deck, took my goggles off, 100 dolphins again. It was almost like they'd watched me do it.
Yeah.
And it, in my mind, whether I was going mental or not, I don't know. It was almost like they pushed out and created like a ring of steel around the boat to give me the confidence to do it. It was unbelievable, man.
I've got goosebumps.
So yeah, there was. Sorry, mate.
I said I've got goosebumps here just listening to this story. It's amazing.
It's all on my Instagram. So if anyone wants to see, you know, clips of that stuff, most of it's me crying, right? But I said to my wife, I'd call her twice a week because everyone was like, enjoy the solitude, mate, disconnect from the noise, smash the ocean. Yeah, no one smashes the ocean. And I called her twice a day, every day, crying my eyes out. What the fuck am I doing out here? It's Christmas Day and I'm sat eating some rations and having a cold cup of tea on deck. It was tough, man.
Yeah.
But worth.
I've got a question back to that, Mike. Most people who can relate to that, they're not rowing the Atlantic, but they're usually at night time thinking about their most deepest, darkest thoughts. What went through your head in those nighttime periods? Like, what was? Did you have anything any big revelations, biggest thoughts?
No, I mean, I hallucinated a lot.
Yeah,
which was a bit weird. No, I was in survival mode, mate. I was in absolute survival mode. I was blinkers on, like just stay alive. You know, because the hard thing about the solo is not withstanding the fact you can't talk to anyone, is that when you're off the oars, and let's say you go in the little cabin at the end, which is like a coffin, right? Your legs go underneath the deck, and you're laid there. No one else is out on deck, so you can't see what's going on. And there was a couple of times I got hit by massive waves and almost capsized, like it was called a knockdown. You get fully on your side, water pouring into the cabin, and like at those moments, you're just thinking, survive, man. But you've got to find. And it would be the same for someone laying in bed at night thinking about their darkest thoughts. You've got to find that meaning again. You've got to find the purpose. You've got to discover what it is worth living for. And for me, it was seeing my wife and 2 children again. And it was as simple as that, because I realized connecting to other human beings, doing what we're doing now, is all that matters in life. This is all that matters. And it's the most important thing. We should cherish it every single day.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
I know. And it's amazing. I mean, I try and as I'm listening to the story, I'm getting goosebumps listening to it. But then I'm thinking, I can't even imagine myself being in that position. I mean, I'm quite used to the water, quite well on boats and I've been out a lot, done a bit of sailing. Not on my own. Not on my own. And I'm only probably a nautical mile away from the coast as well. And I could probably swim it in worst case. But yeah, I can imagine the sheer dread when that side wave just wipes you out, and I know exactly what it's going to do to one of them little boats. You're going to feel like you've been catapulted 30 foot into the air and spun around a washing machine.
I was, yeah, knocked
Yeah.
off my seat, yeah, all the time, yeah.
Yeah, wow. So, mate, it's an absolutely amazing story.
But it's amazing, you know, with the power of that motivation, you can do incredible things, you know, and I think people sell themselves short. So I'll tell you a little story about the last 24 hours. I hadn't spoke about this much, actually. So I was about 24 hours out, about like maybe 35 nautical miles out. You can start to see land at 33 miles. So, but it was dark. So I knew Antigua was there somewhere. I knew my family had flown in. They were on the island. And when the weather turned to come from the north, so it was whacking me from the side. And what was happening was I was having to row into the weather for 4 hours to be able to rest for about half an hour, because I'd be pushed a mile south in that time, right? And there's a thing called the rum line. If you're south of the rum line, you can't get into Antigua because the currents push you into the Caribbean, right? So I'm rowing for 4 hours. I have a bit of a rest. I fall asleep. I wake up with a jolt, and I'm now 1.5 miles south of the rum line, heading towards Guadeloupe.
Right.
Shit. Middle of the night. So I ring the safety officer. I'm like, I can't get into Antigua. He says, everyone behind you is on parachute anchor. So it's 80 meters a line, 10-foot silk parachute, holds the water, holds the boat, right? Stops the drift. He said, you're going to have to go on parachute anchor and just wait out this storm. I was like, I ain't going on fucking parachute anchor, mate. He's like, what are you on about? Everyone's on parachute anchor. You can have to. I said, I ain't going on it. He said, well, what are you going to do? And honestly, I just said, I'm going to row non-stop until I see my family again. He was like, that's for 24 hours. I was like, yep. So I rowed non-stop for 22 hours. And the last 7, the waves and wind picked up again. And it was a max effort row for 7 hours. So, and when I mean max effort, I mean jump on the erg now and go as hard as you can for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Non-stop. And after 22 hours of rowing and 46 days living on a boat, so on your own, not seeing another person. So even I didn't think that was physically possible. Yeah. But you can do anything.
But if
you've got the motivation that pulls you towards something worth, you know, so much. So don't sell yourself short is my message to everybody.
Yeah.
Did that row lock a new identity post MOD military and stuff in the 20-year career? Was that like a revelating moment? You so actually, I have even greater limits than I even thought before outside of my original identity.
Yeah, it just made me realize there are no limits.
Yeah.
The limits that we have are the ones we placed on ourselves, right? And they're not real.
Yeah.
They're just our own thoughts. So there are no limits. You can do pretty much anything. It's like I said at the beginning, you know, I'd encourage everyone to live the life that they want to live, because it's your life and you've only got one. So do what you want to do. Take some risks. Push yourself. Train hard. You know, love hard. You know, you've got to do it, man. Yeah. Because you're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
So before I want to get on to the next 45, because I really, really like the concept of what you're building there. I'd like to touch base on like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And like, you know, the rise to being a black belt is not an easy accomplishment. We've had one of my children's godmother. She came on our show. She's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It took her years to achieve it. Claire Lydiard, she actually had cancer halfway through it, and you know, she lost all of her energy and her testosterone and all that sort of side to it to be able to achieve it. So we talked about her career in it. So did you take up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu whilst in the military, or was it something that you decided afterwards that you thought, oh, actually, it's a real big passion, I want to pursue it a little bit more? Like what made you get into that bit more?
Yeah, well, I got into it in 2002, mate, when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu didn't really exist in the UK. There was Mauricio Gomez, which is Roger Gracie's dad here. Braulio Estima, who's the brother of my professor, Victor. He arrived around 2001, 2002. It was like Fight Club when I started, honestly. Like, no one knew about it, but if you knew about it, then you were an absolute ninja, because no one could ever beat you in a fight. So it was like a Fight Club. And the reason we started doing it was because we were off to Afghanistan to become the first British troops to deploy to the region in 2002, trying to find bin Laden, right? So we were in the Tora Bora region, the high mountains, where all the Taliban caves were. And we thought, well, we're going to be in these caves with these guys. We're gonna have to fight with our bare hands.
Yeah.
So we started grappling because we thought we'd have to use it against the Taliban.
Mm.
And I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it like most people fall in love with it, because of, whether they realize it or not, because of the tactile nature of it.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's an innately human thing to do, is to be close to somebody. You know, you're cuddling people in pajamas, basically. That's what you're doing in jiu-jitsu, right? And strangling them at the same time. So I did it for about 5 years. Then I left the Marines, joined the intelligence world in London. Couldn't find an academy that really kind of resonated with me. And then I was on a surveillance job, and I pulled into like a back alley, and I saw a sign that said MMA. I thought, and it was 2009. I thought, I've just got to get back into it. Like, I missed it. So I started training again. Found my professor, Victor Estima, in Gracie Barra, and I've just trained ever since, mate. Where the first thing I would pack in my bag before I went on any operations or anything was my gi. So I just trained everywhere in the world, and it's like a big family, right? That's the beautiful thing about it. And the reason for that, and I think it's very similar to the military and rugby in this regard. And I've worked with the Leeds Rhinos this year again. It's shared adversity. You know, when you are suffering together on the mat, when you are working hard and you're losing a lot, you see the real character in people, and it builds this kind of trust and these bonds that transcend the art. And you know that you can go anywhere in the world. If you train jits, if you've got ears like mine, you know, people look after you. It's good, mate. And so what I wanted to do when I left the MOD in lockdown, we started it. I remember coming home and saying to my wife, "I've got a great idea, love. I'm going to start a contact sport in lockdown." She's like, "Mate, you've lost your mind. You can't go out." But I knew that people would want to come back as a community. Yeah. And right now, again, 2 miles up the road at Gracie Bar around Leeds, we've got 520 students training every single week. Biggest in the UK, Gracie Bar. And it's built on community, mate. It's built on culture.
I mean, I've been in it since 2008. I trained, but like, I'd say I'm the most laziest white belt still going now. Literally, I've got to the point, I get my 5 stripes, do blue, something pops up, and it's an itch that I've got. That's the reason why I've asked you, because post ultra running is the next thing. I tried to do both at the same time, but I realized I was getting injured whilst trying to do it, and I just couldn't physically do the two. So the itch is the running until I get whatever I want out of it. And then I feel like the next stage is, especially with my children, going to start to be trained by the godmother. Like, I know that's going to be my next evolution as a dad, getting back into it. But I went into 2007-8, did a lot of MMA, and that was a calling. I remember going down to a friend's. He said, "Just come down to the gym." Went down there, and I was going to watch it, and the guy was like, "No, you're getting involved in this," and I've loved it from different assets of all over the years. And I call it like human chess. That's what I always see it as, like. And it takes your mind away from what's going on, because you have to focus on like your next move. You can't just stop and think about like what's going to be for tea, because you end up getting choked.
No, exactly, mate. It's like being plugged back in. That's what Hoyle Gracie said. It's like being plugged into the wall when you do jiu-jitsu and getting recharged, charging your phone up. You know, you recharge your kind of soul, and you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So like, you need to do it because you need to do it because. And people, you know, a lot of my students, I'm having kids, or I've got a busy work period coming up, I won't be able to train. I'm like, that's when you need to train the most. Yeah. Because you need something just for you. Yeah. So you can come back into your work or your family life with a full cup and be the best possible dad or leader or all you can be, right? Yeah. Mate, you should come train with me. Anytime, you'll be welcome, honestly.
I always talk about like a triangle of flow with like your identity, your work, and your family. And a lot of people go into family and work, but what they forget is actually you have to have the communication and boundaries and discussions back with both of those sides to say, I need some time now to like focus on myself, to be the best dad, or to level up in my work. And if you just put all your energy in those, you just, like you said, just stay stagnant. You never elevate. I've noticed, and you've probably done in the years doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as you raise those levels of like, I went from 5K running, running around the block, crying, unfit, thinking this is a load of bullshit. And every time I've got further and further, or I've done something greater, it's impacted my personal life in a wholly different way beyond it. So what would you say, like, that's impressive, over 500 students. So
Yeah.
like, for anyone out there who might be thinking, oh, I would like to get into some like martial arts, and they think what they think is different, because you know, it's like you try and speak to someone about it, what they think is different to when they come down. Like, what would you say is like, have you got any stories or anything you'd probably want to share with someone that's maybe someone's come along to it, and then at the end of it, they've, you know, a few years down the line, they're a different person? Have you got anything relatable to that you could probably share with people who might be in that similar boat?
I've got hundreds of stories like that. I mean,
I've got
it is a
500.
transformational.
500 of them, yeah.
Yeah, it is a transformational thing, because it ticks so many boxes. It impacts your life on so many levels. You know, there's the physical aspect of it, of course. So you're gonna get fitter, you're gonna get healthier, your body's gonna get more robust. You know, if you start training jiu-jitsu, the first week you won't be able to move. You'll be stiff as a board. You'll be covered in bruises. But the body adapts, doesn't it? So, like, you know, I never get bruised now when I roll super hard with some of my students, and train multiple times a day, and you can do it. I think there's the social aspect of it, and that's the thing that pulls people in, because it is tactile. And I always say to my students, the sooner you understand that jiu-jitsu is half about you and half about your training partner. And I call it a dance when you roll, right? Because if if we had a waltz and I'm treading all over your feet, you ain't going to dance with me again.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be a good partner for the person you're with, and that shows trust. You know, you're going to put your arms around my neck, and I've never met you before. I bloody hope you're going to take them off when I tap, right?
Yeah.
So I think it just impacts people on so many levels. We haven't even scratched the surface of jiu-jitsu in the UK yet. It's massive in America. It's, you know, part of the school curriculum in the UAE. It's massive. And if you ask people now, still, what's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? They do that, put their hands up like karate hands, and it's like, no, it's completely the opposite. And the final thing, of course, we've got to say it, and I apologise in advance for anyone who does any kind of Far Eastern martial arts. It's like those martial arts don't work.
Yeah.
Boxing, wrestling, grappling, that's all you need.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting. I went to a Wim Hof experience a few weeks ago out in the Netherlands. And what I loved about, one of the things I took away from it, there was a guy who's about middle 50s. And he was doing it because it was like a training mat in one of the areas. It's like the blue mats. It looked like a conventional, like it almost looked like we were about to do a competition. You could see him doing like his shoots basically down. And I went up to him and said, "Do you do jiu-jitsu?" And he was like, "How did you know?" I was like, "You can always tell." And he said, "Oh, do you know what? These mats have made me feel like I've missed this and I haven't done this for 10 years. And when I come out of this, I'm really going to get back into it." And I was thinking, how awesome is that? He came for an experience of Wim Hof, thinking cold water therapy, breath work, all that sort of side to it. And he's probably thinking, like, next week I'm going to be joining my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym. But I love that what you said, like, because what I noticed with it, and you're probably experienced, you're way more experienced obviously than what I've had with it, but I always found that you have new members join, and it's the release of the ego, because you get people like you tap with someone who's never been before, you roll with someone who's never before, you slap their hand, and they're like tensing up, trying to grab you. You're like, release, just get chill. I'm not going to choke the hell out of you. We're here, like, you're here to learn. And you see the evolution of that person, and like they then teach the next person. But I always found it was like the release of one's ego into, like you said, dancing with someone else, allowing to, you know, without trying to rip someone's arm off, like allowing to try and help someone go, right, okay, I'm about to, like, I could break your arm here, but work out how you're going to get out of this. I'm not going to do it. So I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, hence why it's always been that itch that I haven't yet scratched.
It's a primal thing, mate. Like, you know, hand-to-hand combat grappling, it's a primal thing. And the reason people use a lot of energy, it's not their fault. They don't know what they're doing. So it's the only thing they've got. You know, more strength, more power, more effort. And I always say, the more you know in jiu-jitsu, the less you need.
Yeah.
You know, I wear a whoop, and I always wear it when I roll, and I'm never out of zone 3, ever.
Yeah.
And my students are dying, right? Like, the more you know, the more efficient you can be, the more unconsciously competent you can be, where it's on feel and timing and instinctual. That's where the magic is, man. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful.
I've rolled my black belts in the past, and like sometimes you were with it, and then you're like, you secretly deep down know what they're trying to get you into, and you're like, hi, like you're trying to recalculate it in your head whilst and like, I always like, I'm end up swearing and like, you're a prick, because I know what you're about to do. And he's like, come on, work on it. I'm like, no. So I love that. I love that element. So
a quick one on the kind of new student thing as well, because it's important for anyone thinking. So like I always say to my students, the two toughest promotions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are your first stripe on your white belt and your black belt. Because a black belt shows that you never gave in, right? You've trained for 8 to 10 years or whatever it is, probably less nowadays, because when I started, there was one black belt in the UK. It was, blue belts were teaching us, and they were like gods. If you had a blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu in 2002, you were like a god.
Yeah.
Right. But now they get black belts teaching all the time, so it's maybe a bit quicker. But the first stripe is an interesting one because I call it the no dickhead rule. So like if I give you that promotion, I'm basically putting my name to you. You can start to live train. You can't live train in my academy before then.
Yeah.
If I give you one stripe, that allows you to live train, which means you can kind of go and have a roll with people. There's people I have not given a stripe to, and I've asked them to leave because they're not right for our community. And they're not right for our culture. So if they don't leave their ego at the door, we've got a sign that says no hot drinks, no egos as you walk onto the mat. So if they bring that ego on and they act like a clown, 2 things are going to happen. One, I'm going to ask you to leave, or you're rolling with me next.
Yeah.
So
you're going to get slapped.
That's the way
You know what?
That's the way it's going to be, man.
Final point on that, Mike. I think probably what you alluded to earlier about it still being an untapped source in the UK. I think that's the bit that is missed. Training with a couple of gyms over the years, or some have gone, you train with one and they go bust, whatever. The bit that I've always struggled to find is the community element to it. You've had a lot of like people who have done MMA, done a bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, set up their own thing under affiliation, but they never craft the community and the feeling. And that's the bit that I always, you walk into a gym and you don't get that. That's like half of what you're there for. Like, and that, like you said, it goes back to the trust of the people you're rolling with, the sense of worth, what you're trying to achieve out of it. And I don't think we only talked about one of our podcasts, and this week was talking about environments. And like, environments are the fundamental part of creating any team, like growth. So, I love what you said that, because I think it's really good on that part.
You should come and see our place, man. I mean, it is very different.
I dust off my brownie white belt.
Anytime you want, mate. No, it is. It's a phenomenal environment. It's a good word to use. We serve amazing coffee. We've got a place for people to relax. We've got amazing mats. We've got an ice bath, gym. Like, it's premium. It's beautiful. Yeah. I think that the gyms now, what people expect is a really good experience.
Yeah.
And if you've got a dusty old warehouse that's freezing in winter and boiling in summer and the mats are never cleaned, that's why those gyms fail.
Yeah.
If you actually invest and you make sure it's spotlessly clean and it's beautiful and it's a great environment, people will stay.
My first gym was above a car garage. You had to go above a car garage, and they were still using the front of the car garage to go behind it down some steps into what used to be like the pit basement bit. It still had the wooden boards. And then the second one was a commercial warehouse that they had the massive gas turbine things so whilst you're rolling, you're basically dying on like carbon monoxide poisoning from the fucking turbine. So I 100% get what you're saying about that, mate. So the final point, I want to get on to next 45, because we love the concept of it. Dave and I were talking about it. It will resonate a lot with our community. So, like, over to you, Mike. What was a step into next 45? How did that come about with a couple of your other co-founders?
So, as I said, I hit 40, 2020, served my country for half my entire life, but I just felt different. I'd read that book by David Brooks, and I felt that the first mountain, I'd climbed it, and it wasn't a mountain I wanted to continue to climb. I wanted to get onto the second mountain. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I say this with modesty, but I've achieved a fair amount. So I was like, if I've achieved all that and I'm still feeling a bit different, and of course testosterone drops and libido drops, it's just you're getting old, right?
Yep.
I thought, what about everyone else? What about the people who haven't done that stuff? So I started looking into the statistics around men's health, and I was absolutely staggered by the men's health crisis which was going on. And then I started to think, when was the last time we actually had a conversation about men's health? Because we've had, rightly so, by the way, amazing conversations around gender and race and equality and all that kind of stuff. Me too. Like, we had to have those, and we've moved the shift of the dial hugely in more of those areas. Still work to do, but we've done a good job societally. But never have we had a conversation about men, because men are expected to man up. They're expected to get on with it. They're expected to have all the answers. And if we don't, we feel shame. And we then mask that feeling with drink and drugs and gambling and porn and the risk behaviours. And so 1 in 8 men have a mental health issue in the UK. We're most likely to have a health issue, yet the least likely to go and seek help for it. When we founded Next 45 last year, 3 out of 4 people who killed themselves were men, 75%. It's now 4 out of 5. It's 80%. And the mean age is 50 to 54. It was 40 to 49. It's moved a little bit older. It's not young people doing it. It's guys in midlife who can't get on that second mountain. And so I knew I wanted to fight. It's the first business I registered when I left the MOD. And I knew I wanted to do it, but I knew I didn't have all the skills. I know myself well enough. Back to your point about self, I've done a lot of self-reflection, introspection to understand who I am. And I knew I could help people with the mindset, with the goal setting. I can inspire people to do stuff. But I knew a big part of it was health and fitness. And another big part of it was psychology. So I co-founded it with 2 of my jiu-jitsu students, actually, who I'm really good friends with. Johnny Gratian, who played Super League for 12 years, professional rugby league player, and an expert in transformations for health, nutrition, training. And Joe Gordon, who was a multi-billion-pound CEO, turned stage 1 trained health psychologist. So we've got a really great mix between the 3 co-founders. And we think we've probably got what it takes to start that conversation, and that's what we're trying to do, man.
Nice. Love it. So you've done one of these events already?
So we do a number of things. So we run a flagship event called the 100 by Next 45 every September, first weekend of September. We ran our first one last year. I remember telling people, I'm going to put 100 blokes in a field, no booze, fire cooked food, breath work, ice baths, yoga, group workouts in a castle, health interventions, blood work. Everyone was like, mate, no one's going to turn up. There's no women there, there's no booze there, like no one's going to turn up. But they did turn up. I think we sold about 35 tickets, right? It's a high ticket item, but it's world class. And then this year we're on course to have about 60 to 80 people there. We've got amazing partnerships. So Through Dark are really supportive of what we're doing, the clothing brand. Primal, Strength. There's loads of people now hearing about what we're doing and trying to get on board. And it is a phenomenal event. So we run that, and then we run, in conjunction with that throughout the year, the community, where we put on monthly masterclasses online. We have our own app, which connects everybody, chat, and they can monitor all the goals and stuff like that. And some in-person events. But we want to get into leaders. I think leaders and fathers are the 2 pillars. So we always say, when men live happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives, like you said at the beginning, Rob, everyone wins. Right? This isn't like an uber masculine thing. This isn't like championing masculinity. This is trying to help society. So you become better fathers, you become better leaders, you become better friends, better brothers, better uncles, better whatever. So we want to move into leaders. We're going to have a leadership cadre, which we'll do every single month. And then we want to do an event. We'd like to do it with Through Dark. I need to speak to them about it a bit more, but around fathers, where men can come with their child and experience all those amazing things like wild swimming and paddleboarding and ice baths and breath work, and it's just magic, mate. It's magic.
I am big smile ear to ear just listening to that. Then and you know, the bit that got me was the togetherness, doing something with lad, and I got lad and dad, the northern in me, lad and dad stuff, because it's amazing, and it resonates with so many people. I know it resonates with me, and I think one of the things is people don't talk about this, and I think, like I say, a lot of people would be really shocked to understand the type of thing. I think that most people think that it's young lads who are on drugs, this, that, the other, got the mental health issues. And actually, from what I can see, it's the guys who you think are doing really, really well in life that are not telling anybody else. I was the guy that used to go home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and sleep on the couch and then leave before the kids come home from school, so they didn't see how weak I was. and then drank every night and took drugs and all this. So I've been in that era. And what was the huge shock to me is the demographic you think this is not. It's Barry next door who doesn't say anything. It's your Uncle Ron. It's this. It's all these people around you who are just not saying it because they're too scared, because they think that they're gonna be weak to other people, and it's such a thing. So if you can get guys out there with the lads and dads and things like that, mate, it's amazing.
Do you
Yeah,
find
I think
sorry,
sorry,
Miles, do you find men are confused with where they sit in society now? Because you've got one element of man up, the other side is don't be too masculine. The other one is like be a strong dad, but don't be a strong dad, or you know what I mean? Like, and do you reckon men are a bit confused about where do I sit in society? And that's what's causing the problem.
Yeah, I think it's causing part of the problem. And I think all of those things which you rightly identify would form part of the conversation.
Mm.
You know, I always say your greatest strength is your ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's why I, made sure that I was honest about the ocean row. And, people say, oh, go smash the ocean. You said at the beginning, Rob, I conquered the Atlantic. No one smashes or conquers the fucking ocean. Mother Nature lets you across and you're a quivering wreck most of the time. So I wanted to show people that was the case. And so, yeah, I think for me, mate, it's about starting that conversation. I think men are confused. I think, speak openly about it. My wife earns more money than me, and she's a better parent than me. What am I doing? Do you know what I mean? She's got that maternal instinct. She can mother our kids, and she's fantastic at it. I get it wrong a lot of the time. She earns more money than me, so I'm not the provider. I might still be the protector, but I'm kind of redundant.
Mm.
And I think we've got to redefine what men are in 2024 and what our roles are in society. We should be great fathers. Part of the issue with children, of course, who are struggling is they haven't got a father in the home. If you grow up in a single parent household, you're 50% more likely to fail at school. 76% of young offenders in custody grown up in a fatherless home. Like, blokes can make a massive difference to the success of children by being great role models.
They say that dads build the resilience in children. Like my partner, she works with special needs and she's going into child psychology. That's her main thing in special needs. And so, the children that she tends to deal with now have come from more complex family situations, especially when it comes to SEN children. And she, I've learned a lot having the father of a girl-boy twins, and she's a nurturer. I build the oxytocin by playing with them, crazy hour before bed, and that sort of side to it. And I've certainly noticed a difference. I always reflect back on if I was a father in my 20s and the father I am today, I'd be two different people, and the children had two different interactions. So my love is my partner does park runs on a Saturday morning. I take the twins down. I usually run with a pram next to her, much to her annoyance, because I'm like, come on, darling, you can do it. She's like, fuck off. Like I'm going as fast as I can. But the children now, we go down to the same beach thing during like on a Sunday, and they go park run, and my daughter's running for 800 meters. She's 2 years old. So those are the bits where you feel like we've made it. And even I do, I'm a massive advocate on cold water therapy. I've done like 500 days now straight of cold water therapy. I've got a barrel in the garden, and the kids, like, when I jump in there, they go cold. And even I was dipping my son's toes in it, and he felt it, and he goes, more. And those are the moments where, if men aren't exposed to those sort of new ways of thinking and doing things, it's such a thing that they haven't tapped into. That is one of the greatest source of energy. Going back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, like, we chase these materialistic things that think we're told that that's the success of a man, until, like Dave said, behind the scenes, actually, you truly find out what is truly success. And a lot of men sometimes having those moments where they ultimately have, I don't know, not recognised it, and almost at a crossroads thinking, I've been reprogrammed all those years, all those period of time. Now I don't know what I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I always say that the litmus test of parenting is if your children want to spend time with you when they're grown up, because they don't have to.
Yeah.
And what's interesting though is, I grew up without a dad. He left at 10-year-old. I started smoking weed every night, drinking at 14, arrested at 15. because I didn't have that father figure. I didn't have that role model. I was rudderless, right? And trying to make it in the world, but I didn't have a clue what I was doing. That's why I joined the military, by the way, to try and find a community, to try and find my tribe. I still don't have a dad. I got in contact with him a month ago. I hadn't spoken to him for about 5 years. And it's been like that ever since he left when I was 10. And but I thought, I'm going to get in touch with him one more time. I've done it like 3, 4, 5 times. It's always me who does it. And I said to him, look, forget the past. There's always a chance for us to have some kind of relationship. Doors are open. Just get in touch and be on. So, I know what it's like. I always say the greatest lesson he ever taught me. He only taught me one, how to be a shit dad. So, that was a really good experience for me. I try and do the opposite of what he's done
100%.
with my kids every single day.
I've got
these. Sorry, Rob. I was going to say that it reminded me of the twin story, and one of the twins is really successful doctor. The other one's a pisshead, effectively. And somebody goes to interview him afterwards and said, why are you the way you are? And they both said the same thing, because of my dad. And it's amazing how we can take and I know it's used in the military where you can turn, your emotion, regardless what it is, into the fuel that you require to get you to that next step. And for you, it's clearly taken one step, which was, okay, I'm going to do this for whatever's happened across your past. But it could have quite simply got you sat on your ass working in Tesco's for the next 30, 40 years. And the answer would have been the same. So it's the direction that we're using this energy in, which is why it's so important for people to be just getting involved in the conversation is the starting point. Then it's the next step. Then it's maybe we'll go to jiu-jitsu, see the guys. Maybe we'll go to do this. Before you know it, you turn down 12 months down the line, you're a completely different person that you were before with a brand new set. And it's like, when I look at the mentalities, it's exactly the same. But I believe that nowadays it's like we're brand new laptops running on Windows 95. Now, Michael probably know what that is. Rob probably won't, but it's really, really old
mate. Come on, mate. I'm 37, mate. So I was schooled on Windows 95 and how shit that was. And
I sold it, mate. That's how old I am. Anyway,
my schools. That's probably what it is.
Well, that's it. So it was a great analogy. And, if you're not privy to the conversation, you're not aware of the difference. And for most people, if you take about now, it's like that programming hasn't been changed since you were 10. And maybe it's time we should go into, PC world and get the new software, because you can't navigate the internet on that software. You can't do this on that software. And if we don't upgrade that software, you're basically fucked. And you look now like you are providing this software, mate, to the lads and lads going forward.
What I like about next, it sounds like for next week 5, going back to the analogy you just used there, Dave, is like everyone, if you think about your brain and your body, you have your hardware and your software. So you can't run great software on crap hardware, and vice versa. If you've got great hardware, but software still isn't as an old bit of software, then they're not going to collaborate. So you need to have the partnership of the two, doesn't it? Right. Final question for you, Mike, and we'll let you get on. You mentioned, like, thanks for sharing about your dad. And that's quite a big one, but it sounds like you, like Dave said, you've taken that and then that's fueled you to the man you are today. But somewhere down the line, most people need a role model to change that. So you said you were drinking at that age, and that's like I had a father in my period of time, but I still went down that bad route in my teenage years. And I remember a particular teacher in my school getting me out of that. So who was that main person that you probably came across that changed you as a role model in your life?
Yeah, great question. I'll just start by saying there's a fantastic book called Raising Boys by Steve Biddulph, I think it is, an Australian psychologist, and he speaks about the importance of young boys, particularly having male role models in their formative years, in the early teens. It doesn't have to be the dad. It can be, to your point, a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be an uncle, it could be a friend, whatever. My granddad really was the guy that I looked up to the most. But interestingly, he was a bit of the black sheep of the family as well. But I say I'm the black sheep because I'm the only one who bloody escaped Doncaster. Everyone else is still there. But so he was the guy I looked up to. He was self-employed. He stood in a market stall 14 hours a day selling bloody cushion covers he's made in his front room with me now. But he was just a really lovely man. And then when I joined the Marines, of course, I had loads of role models because, you know, I was fortunate to experience operations. I said Afghanistan, Iraq, Northern Ireland. You know, my first troop sergeant was a guy called Steph Moran, who was the only person in history as a reservist Royal Marine to become the regimental sergeant major of a unit, 4-5 Commando. And he's a legend in the Corps, like a legend. Anyone says Steph Moran, they know he's an absolute legend. He was my troop sergeant. And watching him and the authenticity he had and the credibility, we'd have followed him into any cave. We just would have gone anywhere because he cared about us. He genuinely cared about us. And I think when I talk about leadership, got to lead with empathy, man. You know, it's about being a good person first and unlocking the inner potential of others. So I was very fortunate to have Steph as a role model. And then, you know, as I've got older, there's been other people coming out of your lives, don't they? I think my wife's taught me a lot about patience and love, and I'm very grateful to have her around. And I think we should be constantly looking for those people. Kev Sinfield, as I said, a good friend of mine, great guy. He says we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. I'll leave you with this. So they're the average, right? And of course, we have then the greatest influence and impact over those 5 people. And they have the greatest influence and impact over us. So you better choose the people you spend your time with very, very carefully indeed, because they shape who you are. And if you're with someone in one of those 5 and they're pulling you in the opposite direction, get rid of them.
Chop them off.
Get rid of them.
I think that's why there's 5 in our Project P performance pack. Like you're only literally the energy that we had this morning. Like Ian had just done, one of the guys had just done a 3-day fast, and then was running, and Dave just fired him a question.
I'm coaching him like, what are you doing?
Like, whilst you're on this fast, obviously you see this amazing clarity. Like, what shit are you going to do today? And Ian's like, right, I've stopped my run. I'm going to do and like Dave was like, good answer back. So 100% see that and how it's developed over last year doing that. So, so Mike, if last bit of it, where's best for people to connect to you? I know obviously I follow you on Instagram. I see your stuff on LinkedIn. Like, where would you say the best links are for people to connect with you around like different aspects, whether it's Next 45, but also they might want people to get you to speak at a particular event around leadership and resilience. So where's the best place to find?
Thanks, mate. Well, right now it's Instagram, Mike Bates _official. It's Mike Bates on LinkedIn. I'm just working on redoing a really lovely website, but I'm represented by a number of great speaker agents. So if you head to my social media, you'll be able to find them. You can book through them. You can book me direct as well. nxt45.com, next 45. Everything you need to know is there about our events, about what we do, the mission. Grace Bar Round Day Leeds if you want to know about Jiu-Jitsu. I think just head to my social media and connect on there. You know, I'm trying to get a book through the MOD. I've been fighting for 2 years to try and get them to authorise my memoirs, my time spent in the undercover world. They don't want to do it. I'm still fighting it. So connect, and when it does come out, which you will, you'll be the first to know about it.
Happy days.
And the last one, I think you've got, so everyone out listening, it's interesting, next week 5, it's on the 6th to the 8th of September this year.
We sold out of VIP tickets, sold out of camper vans. We've got, I think, 10 Zembes left and some glamping. So if people want to come and join us, get in there quick.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, mate. Amazing stories. And what a nice guy you are as well.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you very much.
You, bro. Appreciate you.
Cheers.